Hi there, welcome to 60 Matthews. I'm Matthew, and today I'm 3D modeling my old van Gladys. So even though I'm not living the van life anymore, I still do have the van. Gladys is still running, she's still kicking around, even though she's very much on her way out and I'm having to make repairs every few months or so. So since her time in this world is limited, and since I never got to do a remodeling of the van like I wanted to do in the first place, today I figured I'd do this video that was a long time coming. The first two attempts I made at redesigning the van were obviously going to account for everything that you would need in a home, like the bedroom, the office, the desk, the kitchen, all that kind of stuff. But since I already have that now, I want to redesign Gladys to be a mobile workshop. Even though I have the space and the storage and everything for all of my art stuff, I still don't really have a workspace for all of my power tools. I don't really have much of an outdoor space, and I think if I utilized all my power tools to create all the stuff that I need to create, I would piss off all of my neighbors and get kicked out of my brand new apartment. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna turn Gladys into my workshop instead. I won't get into the actual build in this video, but I do want to get a pretty accurate 3D model of Gladys, and I want to get a good foundation of the design. Well, that's enough talking about it. Time to get modeling. First, I started with a simple cube that I set with some basic dimensions in object mode, then switched over to edit mode to start chopping up the cube and sculpting out the shape. I also took some pictures of Gladys and got some more exact dimensions for reference, but I found myself constantly struggling with being true to the dimensions or true to the pictures. The pictures weren't perfect, and I struggled to get them all aligned correctly, and the dimensions weren't exactly exact, and plus the van doesn't have a single square angle in the entire thing. So I ended up deleting the entire cube because I broke the geometry somehow. I started over with this hunk of cheese and started separating the segments with some loop cuts. Then it was time to go in and start sliding edges and moving faces, sculpting the shape to actually resemble a van. I've actually learned a lot since my first introduction to Blender. Blender is still a monster of a program, but I'm understanding more and more, bit by bit, the more I use it. In my hiatus, I've actually been working on a ton of projects that utilize Blender. Number one, because I have a lot of projects that I'm working on, and number two, because I wanted to train myself on the program and get better at it. Blender is an extremely powerful tool, but it's deceivingly complex. There's a ton to learn and a ton to remember. But practice makes perfect, so I'm always looking for more things to model. But that's what 60 Matthews is all about, so I'm glad to finally bring my work back to YouTube. I want to keep designing vans in tiny spaces, from minivans to sprinter vans to truck campers to pull-along trailer homes, whatever I can think of, and whatever ideas you guys have, let me know all about them in the comments below. At this point, it was starting to look like something, which was good because it was hard to see Gladys staring at that green block. Especially when I go in and start coloring in the windows and the lights, it really just starts to pop. It goes from looking like a hunk of cheese to an actual vehicle. Even though it's still really blocky, it feels better having more of a van shape to work with. Then it was time to start with the finishing touches. The handles for the doors, the wheels, the lights, and later I come back in and add some side mirrors. I really struggled with getting the wheels right. For some reason I couldn't inset the circle of the wheels correctly to make the hubcaps, and I still can't figure out how to carve out the space around the tires. Every method that I tried just deleted the entire van no matter what I did, so I just gave up on that for now. I'll fix that later, and I'll continue to tweak it and give it more shape the more time I spend with the design. But for this first iteration, I'm just looking for establishing the general shape and giving me a good foundation to build on. But this is when it all started to come together. It was low poly and far from perfect, but it's not too bad for a novice. I'd say that's a pretty good Gladys. After a few hours of modeling, this is where we're at. It's the next day, and I'm so excited to get started on this next phase of the design, the interior, the workshop inside. This won't be the final design for this build either, but I at least want to get the foundation, get the design laid out correctly, and hopefully by the end of this, I'll be able to have a 3D printed model of my minivan where you'll be able to lift off the roof in the back to expose and see the workshop inside. That's the goal for this video, but first we've got to model out that workshop interior. At this stage, I wanted to get a test 3D print just to make sure there were no areas that would be hard for the 3D printer to get to. So it took a couple of tries in the program to get the scaling right, but I wanted to start off pretty small so that I could use less filament and to make sure that the program was calibrated correctly. I haven't used the printer in a couple of weeks, and usually I have to adjust the bed just a little bit. My printer is about 8 inches by 8 inches, so the ultimate goal for this video was to have a pretty big print of Gladys with a roof and a back that lifted off. But then I made this test print. I was using a pretty decent just gray filament for some test projects exactly like this, which is what I should have switched to, but in the printer I was testing some of this filament that was supposed to resemble wood. Since this was just the initial calibrating test, I just used this wood-looking filament. Luckily, the test came out okay, but when I went to switch the gray filament out for the wooden one, a piece of this wood-colored filament got stuck in the feeder. I've had filament clog up the tube before, so I would just replace the tube in the past, but to unclog this is going to take a lot more work. So I don't think I'll get a big retractable 3D print of Gladys for this video, but at least technically I got a 3D print. So after that bittersweet success, it's time to get back to modeling. Just like the actual Gladys, it's got a lot of problems, but it works. I'm pretty bummed that I didn't get a big physical 3D print of Gladys, but the main point of this video was to get a digital model that I could continue designing in long after Gladys is gone. And I did get a 3D print, however small that may have turned out. But I'm pretty happy with these results. Like I said, this is just the foundation. This is a first draft, if you will. I will continue to iterate and tweak and work on this model. I'm happy with how the workshop turned out, even though I will continue to change and tweak and move stuff around, but I'd say it's at a pretty good state for now. Well, that's all I have for this week. I hope you've enjoyed this process and gotten to see a little bit more about how I model in Blender. It is a pretty difficult program to get into and get good at, but it is a must if you're looking to design anything, and it's actually really fun once you get the hang of it. Well, thank you so much for watching. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I hope to see you next time.